In my last video clips, I was talking about living mode versus survival mode. And of course, there's one question, could we, if I'm stating that living mode is probably the next step in our development, how could we reach living mode? What is kind of preventing us from getting into living mode? Why are we in survival mode so much? So with all that talking about survival mode versus changing into living mode, I was asking myself, what are the next questions here, maybe for you, step by step in this process? Because I see survival mode and living mode as a process. We kind of started out, initially I don't think we started out all the way, but kind of our societies right now are in survival mode in many, many areas and many, many aspects of our lives. And I think we are on a journey into living mode. So one question is, what prevents us? What keeps us in surviving mode? What prevents us from changing or getting into living mode? And what would help us to change into living mode together? I think, as we have discussed so far already, survival mode is about surviving, and surviving is against each other. So as long as we have the idea that we need to survive here in any way, whether it's real, outside materialistically, or if it's psychologically, more inside, my idea about myself and about all the others, that I need to survive, of course, that creates a state of separateness. And I think this separateness is exactly what keeps us in survival mode. Our idea that we are separate from each other, that we are separate beings, that kind of promotes that we are here in a way against each other. Especially in a survival context. The question is not, what do we do together? The question, of course, is, how do I get there first, where I find my food? How can I be stronger than you? How can I take advantage of you that helps my survival? So, survival creates separateness, and our idea of separateness also creates survival mode. I think that's kind of a circle. Yeah? And that's already the answer or the beginning of the solution on how to change into living mode. Because living mode, instead of separateness, is togetherness. So the question would really be, where do we get our ideas about ourselves of separateness? Where do we get that from? And what would happen if we change our ideas that we are separate from each other into the opposite, that we are here together with each other? And in the next clips, I will want to start talking about that. And in this clip, it's just, I want to give you the same idea. Where do you feel separate from, all the others? What are the effects of that feeling of separateness, or of that idea of separateness? And how could you yourself, step by step, little by little, change just a little bit into more togetherness, oneness in a way? I've just seen a beautiful speech of Greta Thunberg in Davos, where she was kind of talking exactly about that. Today's problems are impossible to be solved by separateness. Not one person, not one country, not one nation will be able to solve these problems, because they are problems of togetherness. One country, treats environment very badly here. The other countries over there, of course, notice it. Our world is so small today. It's so intertwined. It's so connected to each other. Everything is connected with everything else. That our problems are global, which means collectively, and we can only solve them globally, which means collectively. So the big question is, how do we get from where we are to where we probably need to be? I also think that once we have learned that, once we've understood where we will be going, we will want to be there. But yeah, today there's also the pressure that we need to be there, which might be a little push in our development, our psychological, spiritual development. Yeah, sometimes you need a little help, a push to go where you wouldn't want to go there by yourself, not because you don't want to go there, but maybe because you didn't get the idea to change so far, because not changing is always quite comfortable. So first of all, understanding our ideas about separateness, and I think we have a long tradition with separateness. Different people, different nation, different hierarchies in a society, special people, godlike people like the pharaohs, and then all the rest. Yeah, there's so much separation in our societies. There's so much separations between the genders, men and women, between old and young. There's so much separation between the different cultures, they and we, between different countries, different cultures, they behave differently, they have a different language, they have different manners, they look differently, they dress differently. So there's a lot of reasons in our societies for the idea of separations. Our religions, for the longest times, maybe not in the essence, but in the effect, how they are lived and spread, are religions, most of them, of separateness. Yeah? It's my God and not your God. It's my commandments and not yours. Yeah? It's my heaven and you go to hell. Even in the religion is, if you don't believe in the right way, you go to hell. If you believe in the right way, you come to heaven, you get to heaven. That's separation wherever you look. And of course, that's something we carry inside of us. That's how we are brought up. Many of us, I hope not the younger generations today, but at least my generation plus, grew up with a sense of separateness. And understanding that might help you understanding that this is also a way in how we act. My car, not your car. My job, not your car. My career is against your career, My bank account against your bank account. My safety and security against yours. You stay out there. We build fences that separate us from the intruders, for example. I think that's not going to work much longer. Not because it hadn't worked, because it will not work anymore. And because these ideas, are too old for today's quests, for today's challenges, and for the next steps in our development. I personally believe very strongly that the next steps in our personal development are realizing that we want to reach living mode, which means we want to reach togetherness, which also means we need to end, or let's say transcend to the next level, our ideas of separateness. Where does the idea of collectiveness with each other make more sense than the idea of separateness? Where does the idea of togetherness, where is the idea of togetherness needed, for today's challenges? And maybe, in contrary to that, where is the idea of individuality also useful? Individuality for me is a beautiful part of separateness, because individuality can take place in communality as well. They are not contradictions, because a commune, the big togetherness, consists of many individuals. So it's not an either or, it's an as well as. I'm an individual, but I can start thinking collectively. I can start thinking, myself personally, about the whole globe, about the whole world, as it is necessary today. Separation would mean, I think for myself, as an individual, and I don't care about anything else. That's old. That doesn't help anymore. So, what would happen, and that's a really interesting question, in your life, if you started to experience yourself as an individual, thinking collectively, together for this planet, for this life, for this world? And again, very often, talking about survival mode and living mode, we are also confronted today with the question, and that's a spiritual question, why do we think that we are here in this life? Do we think that we are here just to survive, survive our 80 years and then just go on, or whatever, become dust again? Or do we think that we can take care of our survival here, take care of the basics, and then we are here to live in this life? Of course, then the big question comes, what do we understand by living? What does that mean for us? I think we are exactly on that brink of psychological development, of consciousness, from just being here to survive for the most of us to, well, we are here for a life. And the next question will be, what will we do with this life if we can decide what we want to do with it? I think that's one of the most exciting questions ever. And we might be the first generation on a global scale in history for which it is possible to even ask that question. Why do we really think we are here? If we have the means to leave being here for just surviving, why are we here? What do we want to do with this life, if we can?